Ever planned a trip and wondered what not to do or how to avoid some major mistakes? Well, I've been there and done that over the last 2 years, and this video is about what not to do while you're planning, once you arrive, and while you're there. Are you ready? Let's go. So while you're planning, let's talk travel insurance. I know you're a smart traveler, you know how to do that, and so do I. But there are annual plans and trip plans. Depending on your age and where you're going and how long you're going to be gone, you need to look at whether you want an annual plan and a trip plan on top of that, as well as what your coverage is. I'll tell you what my lesson was. I do trip planning mostly because I come back to the United States and leave and come back to the United States. Many travel insurance trip plans have a maximum of 90 days. So you've got to figure out what your travel planning is going to be. One thing that I learned, once I booked my insurance and I told them what my plans were, anything that I booked while I was gone was not covered. So who goes on a 6-month or a 5-month trip to Australia and doesn't plan anything else? And what happened was we ended up having to cancel a trip to Sydney for medical reasons with a friend that was going with me. Fortunately, I bought AirCover on the Airbnb, so we were completely covered for that. The flights, however, were not covered. I ended up using them anyway because I had to get to Sydney. I had no idea that once I booked that insurance, that any travel after I arrived in country would not be covered. And so it's just something to think about. Where are you going to be and what kind of travel? I don't know anyone who travels for more than 3 months and makes no travel plans while you're there. So just check that out when you're looking for insurance. Don't forget a luggage scale. It is a very small piece of equipment that I carry with me always, and it's the ability to weigh my carry-on and my checked luggage. And yes, I have carry-on and checked luggage. Every airline carrier has a different rule, and when you get to different countries, they're different sizes and different weights. Do not be the person in the airport who is throwing things out in the garbage when you get there. Number of things happen there. It's a little embarrassing. You may end up tossing something you don't want to toss, and you may or may not want to pay the overage charges. If you think you have extra kilos or extra pounds, this luggage scale will allow you to purchase them before you get to the airport, saving you money and embarrassment at the airport. So get that luggage scale. Lots of conversation, especially on a cruise or when you're going to multiple countries. Do you need other currencies? I always have a little bit of extra local currency, which I get from my bank before arrival. I feel I get the best price on that currency exchange. Yes, I use a credit card. No, I don't use ATMs. So I use my credit card mostly, but I want cash for tipping. There may be some instances where I need local cash or it's advantageous. I need to order that from my bank 3 to 4 weeks before I go. So this is something that's on my travel plan at least a couple of months before I'm going to figure out which currencies I need and how much I want to have. So make sure you get that currency before you arrive. I've heard issues with people using fake ATMs. So you got to be really careful when you're going to that ATM that's associated with a bank or inside a bank lobby and hasn't been tampered with. And so I usually have that cash. I also carry crisp, new US dollars. You can go to many currency exchanges and also get good rates, local good rates, but they want crisp, clean, unmarred bills. Now, you've arrived at your destination. I am going to recommend, where possible, you arrive in daylight. I always feel a little disoriented trying to find things or see things in a new country at night. Maybe it's just me, maybe not. So I always try and arrange my travel, even if it means an overnight in my current location in order to get an earlier flight. And obviously I'm looking at prices just like you are, but arriving, before dinner, late dinner, or after lunch is usually my prime if I can't get there in the morning. So just something to consider when you're making those plans. I just find it disorienting, and I feel much more comfortable landing during daylight. Finding a cab, finding my Airbnb, my hotel, my next house sit, all of those things just seem a lot more comfortable to me during the daytime. If you are renting an Airbnb or VRBO, not house sitting and not a hotel, please try everything in that Airbnb the moment you walk in. Is the refrigerator working? Does the stove work? Does the oven work? Is there hot water? Is there enough water pressure? Does the washer and dryer work? Are there linens on the bed or extra linens if you have to make your own bed or towels? What is missing? What might be missing from the listing that you expected to see when you got there? Airbnb within 24 hours will work with you and the host to make sure that everything is fixed. If you wait more than 72 hours, Airbnb and the AirCover that comes with your Airbnb, you can also buy Airbnb insurance. You'll see it when you go. You can just tick it and it'll tell you how much it costs. AirCover is up to 72 hours, and even the extra insurance you buy on Airbnb really doesn't cover beyond 72 hours unless it's like a broken pipe. Everything was fine, and then you have a broken pipe or something like that, something disastrous. So my story was I was in an Airbnb for 2.5 months in Australia, in Melbourne. I didn't test the oven because I hadn't needed it. Bought a beautiful piece of salmon. There wasn't a toaster oven. Go to use the oven, and there is no heat coming out of it. The fan is working, but there's no heat. I asked the host, am I using this right? Here are the buttons. I sent him pictures, and he said, well, I'll send our handyman. Okay, fixing the stove took 3 weeks out of my 2.5 months there. Airbnb put me through the runaround. By the time they offered to move me out, there was not enough money left on my Airbnb to find any apartment during the Formula One series that was going on in Melbourne. So I was sort of stuck with that apartment, and after 4 weeks, they finally replaced the oven because it was not working. Always check to make sure everything is as advertised and that it's working. So either my insurance, the Airbnb insurance, or the AirCover from Airbnb is in effect, and they have very little wiggle room, either themselves or the host. So make sure you test everything out when you arrive. Before you arrive, confirm everything. Your flights, train, cruise, whatever you're doing, your hotel, whatever your accommodations are, Airbnb, VRBO, your tours. I have heard where people show up at the airport and didn't realize their airline had changed. Maybe they missed an email or they hadn't signed up for email. They arrive at their accommodations and it's overbooked or something changed and the host just didn't tell them. A tour may have shifted itineraries and where you're going from and to or vice versa have changed. Check all of that before you leave. 72 hours before. Send everybody an email. Check with your airline. Check with the host. Make sure everything is fine. If you need more than 72 hours, fine. Check a week in advance. But you want something in writing or at least to cover you that says you checked and puts you at ease, and or if something's changed, you're either ready for the change or you can make a change that makes you more comfortable once you arrive. Let's talk about don'ts while you're on the road. So when I'm on the road, I do not cheap out on connectivity. I pay the extra to AT&T so that my phone works the minute I arrive. When I touch down, land, move on, wherever I'm going in any country, my phone connects. Yes, it costs me $10 a day, up to 10 days, $100 max per month. To me, it's worth it. I have access to internet immediately, I have access to maps, and more importantly, I have access to messaging and phone. For me, it's the cost of doing business. A lot of people will go and find eSIM cards, and I think that's fine. I am just used to having my phone number that my friends can get a hold of me, and I can get a hold of them, and we can message. And if you don't know, on iPhone, iMessage is free no matter where you are in the world. WhatsApp requires Wi-Fi, so sure, you can go into a Starbucks or a library and use it. Highly recommend you make sure that you are connected in a way that's comfortable for you while you're on the road. Never travel with just one credit card. You always want redundancy. I know, that makes common sense, but I read about it all the time, and their card got hacked or something. Mine did. Mine got hacked in a food hall in Australia. And unfortunately, they told me about it right away, which was great. And I have 3 or 4 points earning credit cards that I travel with safely. Wells Fargo, for this credit card, was only able to send me a new credit card to the address on file in the United States. And I was due to be in Australia for another 3 months. Now, American Express, Capital One, a number of larger banks and larger really travel-related credit cards will make sure you get that credit card wherever you are. But don't travel with just one credit card because you don't want to find yourself without access to credit, cash, or whatever you might need. Get more than one before you leave. So you've arrived at your travel destination. You're all excited. I'm just going to tell you, don't overdo. You know, we're of a certain age and we get all excited, and the last thing you want to do is spend 12 hours or 10 hours on the most fabulous tour that you were excited about. Well, depending on jet lag and what time it takes off and how long it's going to be, you could really overdo yourself and find yourself wrecked the next day. So I just say pace yourself. Don't do nothing and don't isolate yourself, because that is not fun travel. So you've got to find a balance between being so excited to be there that you exhaust yourself and so tired that you isolate yourself. Especially if you're a slow traveler like I am, you're going to be there for a while, so there isn't any rush. But even if you're there for a week or two, the rushing around doesn't make it a vacation really, right? So we want to make sure that we're pacing ourselves so that we can enjoy, we sleep well, we eat well, and we wake up refreshed and ready to start the next day. On that subject of don't isolate, there are lots of ways to connect even before you get to a destination, especially if you're slow traveling. International Friends Group, IFC, is all over the world. Internations is all over the world. Facebook groups in the local area that you're going to, whether it's for meetups or tours, great fonts of information. I tend to get on those boards before I get to a destination, even 2 or 3 months ahead. I lurk for a while to see what's going on and get answers to questions I might already have. And then when those are not answered, I will start posting and ask questions and ask for advice. And maybe you have a hobby. I mentioned in previous videos, I actually picked up my pottery experience again when I was in Berkeley, and it was wonderful, especially if you're slow traveling, to find a community of like-minded people. It was just a wonderful way to not be isolated during the day and have some place to go and people to talk to and learn from. So maybe you have a hobby. I'm actually going down to South America, Buenos Aires, and there are so many on the cruise who are tango people. They are all set up to do tango when they're in Buenos Aires. So what are your hobbies? You could find lots of opportunities, especially if you're slow traveling, to connect with people while you're there. The next video I suggest is how I got started on solo travel.